everybody. It's Williams here, your law firm mentor. Today is Monday, July 8th. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday if you celebrate July 4th. And for those of you that don't celebrate July 4th, I hope that you enjoyed some time off anyway and had a nice barbecue or spent some time with family doing things that we love to do for the summer. So I haven't seen you guys in a little bit now because last week I decided to try out a little experiment and I worked from the home of one of my cousins in lovely North Carolina. I was in Charlotte and I was working all day, but I was working from home. Good morning. Nice to see people are starting to come in. Great to see you, Elsa. So I decided that I was going to try this out. And I miss being in my office. You know, I miss having the little caricature of me that's immediately behind my head off to my right. Starting to see some more people. Hi, Tiffany. Good morning. Hi, Allison. Nice to see you. Love that name. But I decided that I was going to I was going to try this working remote thing, and it was interesting. You know, technology is kind of an interesting thing, and once you're all set up in your space, you know, some of us are really good transient workers. We can kind of go from place to place. I am very much about being where I am, but I also love. Good morning, Kelly. I very much love also being here in my home with my birds. My office is my home. So anyway, but I'm back. So I'm here in the lovely land of New Jersey this week. And Friday, I will be in Annapolis, Maryland, seeing the lovely Elsa Waite-Smith. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But today, I wanted to come on and talk to you guys about something that came up for me recently, and something that I think a lot of us could benefit from as law firm owners. So there's two topics, but they go hand in hand, and you're going to see how. Those topics are platforms and haters. Okay, so platforms. Most of us know that having a law firm gives us more money and more free time, right? That's kind of one of those things I've been preaching since I came on the scene, and anyone that knows me knows that that's what I help lawyers do, accomplish more money and more free time. But your law firm can be much more than just a vehicle to make money and a vehicle for you to enjoy your life, even though those are completely laudable goals, if those are your goals. Some of us created a law firm because we had a voice and we wanted to share something that we couldn't otherwise share with the world unless we had the ability to control the narrative. And that is what you would refer to as a platform. So I want to talk to you guys today about what it is to have a platform and how to use your business as a platform. But in particular, I really want to be clear that a platform is not just a message. So lots of people who are in a particular practice area believe that they can do it better. Right? They believe that there is a way to practice law that is the right way versus the wrong way. And to some degree, even if you have not publicly declared there is a wrong way to practice law. Good morning, Brad. Nice to see you. Even if you haven't declared that there's a wrong way to practice law, I think we all know that if we're doing it our way, we think our way is the better way, or else why would we not choose to do it a different way? So we kind of have that belief just in being professionals and doing the things that we do. But at the same time, if you want to change the system or change the way in which something is done, that doesn't automatically equate to having a platform or wanting a platform to do that. So I'm going to give you some examples of what a platform might be. Some of the most common ones are someone who wants to reform the criminal justice system, not just somebody who wants to get the greatest result for their one criminal defendant, but who wants to reform the way in which sentences are meted out, or the way in which people are prosecuted, or the way in which communities are policed. That would be a platform. Somebody who wants to help individuals create a better way to divorce, not just I want to be the best damn divorce lawyer there is, or I want to help people to create better post-divorce outcomes, meaning higher level of enforcement or compliance with judgments and court orders, but I actually want to change the way that people go through the process. I don't want the process to be adversarial, or if it's adversarial, I don't want the process to have an adverse impact on kids. I don't want law guardians and guardians ad litems involved, or I want them involved to a higher degree, right? That would be changing the process. Then there are some people that are really dedicated to the idea of changing how people protect themselves in our society using the law. So that could be helping entrepreneurs to protect their IP rights, or to trademark their intellectual property. How do we do that, right? Yes. Amy says, me, making people see the inside and not the outside. So that's her platform. That's what she wants people to do. That's the reason why she has this kick-ass personality that shows up in everything that she does, including wearing pink hair and Prada sneakers to court, because she wants to change people's perception that you have to look a certain way in order to be successful. And so there's lots of different ways that you can have a platform, but whatever your platform is, there are some common elements to having a platform. So first and foremost, your platform is based in your why it is that you chose to do what it is that you do. And everybody has a story, but some of us, our story is more of a mantra. And many times that comes from a broken place, i.e., somebody decides they want to go into estate planning because they saw the death of a loved one cause a complete destruction to their family, and they don't want to have anyone else go through that type of painful experience. Or some people advocate for victims of domestic violence because they personally have gone through a relationship involving domestic violence. So your motivation can be the reason why you ultimately would choose to go into the practice of law, and even the reason why you might choose to start a business. But not everybody takes that to the level of having a platform. And many times it is because of a fear of judgment and criticism that people are going to take your personal stuff and broadcast it and then look down on you because of it. And it's overcoming that fear that will oftentimes give us the greatest benefit in marketing, so that as we are stepping out into the world being ourselves, we can be more of ourselves. We will attract more people who have a need for what we have to offer, and we can serve more people that way. But however you have decided that you are going to use your platform, just know that it starts from your why. And so one of the things that's beautiful about that is that you can have lots of different types of people and motivations that cause a platform, and many different platforms can accomplish the same goal. So think about it this way. There are people out there in the world that went through something in their childhood, and maybe they were falsely accused of a crime. And as a result of how they were treated, maybe lack of resources led to a poor criminal defense attorney, and ultimately they were convicted. Maybe they want to change the criminal justice system because they personally went through something. Well, that's a very different message than somebody who was victimized in their early life. Hi, Keisha. Nice to see you. And somebody who, going through that process might otherwise say, listen, I had my child run over by a drunk driver, and my child was, catastrophically injured and or died. And I want to reform the criminal justice system because this person got a smack on the hand and got sent to rehab, while my child is going to forever be the victim of this heinous crime, right? So again, a different type of reform, a different desired outcome, but still comes from a personal experience that leads one to say that this is my why. So for those of you that are listening, and I see quite a few of you coming into the live. So if you're here and you haven't already said hi, please do say hi. I do want to acknowledge you on the live. But I want to ask of those of you that are here, how many of you have something that you want to say that is bigger than just, I want to come to work every day, do my job, and then go home? And if you are selecting yourself into that group, do know I'm not going to call you out or anything or ask anything more personal about it other than that. Hi, Melanie. Great to see you. There's lots of different ways that you can use your platform, but if you have a desire to have a platform, I think the first thing you have to do is own it. So I'm asking you, as we go through today's discussion, to do own your platform. Just even here, just say, hey, yeah, I have a platform. I have a reason for practicing law outside of just making money. Okay, so the next thing to understand, and I referenced it a little bit earlier, is the idea of competing platforms. Hi, Ruby. Nice to see you. So competing platforms. There is no such thing as a competing platform, right? There's lots of different people that have lots of different desired outcomes in society. And even if those desired outcomes are the same, the way that one person will speak that message into the universe is not identical to the way another person will speak that message into the universe. So I'll give you a common example. I am a business coach, and I am firmly committed to help lawyers achieve more money and more free time in business. And one of the things that I help you to do is to crush chaos, right? I really believe in systems. I believe in systems as a way of freeing you. Hi, Breezy. Nice to see you. I believe in systems as a way of creating a pressureless, or certainly a lower pressure work environment than you would otherwise have. And I believe that without systems, you are going to ultimately have to work harder and achieve less good results. So I am committed to that as a business owner and as a business coach. But I know plenty of people that are also committed to that, right? There's other coaches out there that talk about the value of systems. They talk about why you need to have them. They talk about what's important about them. And I don't believe that the way that I talk about systems is somehow less relevant, less valuable, less necessary because someone else is saying the same thing, because they're saying it from their experience and I'm saying it from my experience. You know, for me personally, I was always one of those hard driving people. I was working all the time. I loved my work, but I also was fanatical about my work, which came from an unhealthy place that I've talked about in other lives. And in the course of learning how to create a business and wanting to scale my business, I knew that I needed to not have chaos in my day to day. I don't like things being done last minute. I don't like coming into the office and having things land on me and not having any degree of predictability of my day. I don't like knowing that I'm going to be responsible for a few $100,000 next month and the next month and the next month and not knowing how I'm going to spend it. That creates anxiety for me. So having a system and having a series of systems in my business made life better. But there are other people that don't have that background who may have been very successful as lawyers, but they started a law firm and they grew it to a couple $100,000, not something insubstantial, but not a few $1,000,000. And their desire for systems may come from just the general idea of wanting to be able to go to the beach with their kids, right? A lot of business owners, they have a primary wage earning spouse. They have someone to financially help them. So their goal is not to make the most money. Their goal is to practice and enjoy having a career, but also enjoy a lot of time with family. And that is no less a laudable goal than somebody who wants to make $1,000,000 or a few $1,000,000 for their own personal wealth. Whatever your desire is, your desire, however, is going to be spoken through what you put in the marketplace, whether you choose to or not. It's kind of the idea of your slip is hanging. There's only so much you can really hide who you are and what's motivating you. And my suggestion is that you not hide it and that you make it present. But making it present doesn't mean that you are necessarily creating a platform. It just means that you are creating a marketing message that's tied very essentially to who you are. So speaking of marketing messages, I've talked about this a lot, the idea of creating an ideal client avatar. I do have a worksheet and I've given it out to several people already. There's going to be an opt-in at the end of the live. I will put it into the comments for those of you that have not created your ideal client avatar. You definitely want to work on that. So just kind of staying with this idea of competing platforms, I want you to really think about comedy, right? Because we often use very macabre, dark examples for how we want to communicate things. I want to use something funny. So two comedians that I like are George Carlin and Bill Maher, right? They both have a sardonic wit. George is no longer with us, but when he was here, he talked about those 7 dirty words that we're not allowed to say. And he used a lot of potty humor and dirty humor, or whatever you want to call it. And Bill Maher kind of has a more politically astute edge. His show is politically incorrect. But both of them have a place in the marketplace, even though they both are very much the same if you really think about it. They both are libertarian. They both are, to some degree, anti-marriage. They both are, to some degree, anti-establishment. And they both have an idea that the world needs to be a little bit more light in order for us to get through some of the atrocities that we will face as humans. And there's a place for both of them, right? There's not a requirement that we can only choose one or the other. And they both have created a platform, i.e., by virtue of me having a message about the world, I'm going to use my trade, comedy, to bring that message to the world in a way that's going to affect people. And the fact that Bill Maher may be someone who you listen to and laugh at does not mean you could not listen to and laugh at George Carlin. One can say the same thing about keto and the South Beach diet, right? So let's take it to a little bit more personal space. I definitely could benefit from either or both of those diets. Hi, Elsa. Great. I'm glad that you are a Carlin fan. I'm definitely a Carlin fan also. But, if you think about diets, there's room for keto and there's room for the South Beach diet, right? They're not the same. They have different premises. One is all about eating more fat. The other is all about eating more protein. The goal is to reduce or eliminate carbohydrates, unhealthy carbohydrates, non-vegetable carbohydrates in both diets. But they are both trying to achieve the same thing. They both have the same goal, which is to help people lose weight and become more healthy. We would not say that we can only have one way of doing that. Now, I'm sure there are some people that are fanatical, right? There are some people that fanatically follow the keto diet. They believe that is the right one. Hi, Allison said. I just read Dr. Okay, I'm going to try that word. Agatston's. I hope that I'm saying that correctly. Agatston's book this past week. So I imagine that Dr. Agatston is probably a proponent of either keto or South Beach, probably the former, because keto is really popular right now. Allison, correct me if I'm wrong. But either of those diets can help you achieve your goal, right? And if you are fanatical about one, you're probably not going to be fanatical about the other, even though you may be fanatical about the idea of being healthier and about weight management and health management as a general premise. So there's another example. And then, of course, taking it to the legal world, if you really think about law, South Beach creator. Okay, that's who Dr. Agatston is. So thank you, Allison, for sharing that. If you think about the legal world, I want you to think about high-end divorce versus do-it-yourself divorce, right? There are proponents of both in our society. There are those people out there that say that divorce costs too much and takes too long, and that they want to bring a low-cost alternative to traditional, expensive, time-consuming divorce to the marketplace. And then there are those people that say, I want to help people who have sophisticated issues such as business ownership and real estate investments and property division and premarital assets and executive compensation plans. And that's not a do-it-yourself divorce. No matter how many proponents of do-it-yourself divorce are out there, if you try to do it yourself in present day valuations of stock options and distribution of executive comp plans with payouts over a term of years, you're going to screw something up or result in an unfair outcome. So there should not be a computer program that people pop their numbers into and then pop out with a divorce settlement, right? You can maintain both of those thoughts contemporaneously because even though they both deal with an outcome, which is to end an unhealthy or unhappy relationship, a marriage, the outcome does not have the same nuances for people who are a different avatar. So people who have different goals out in the general premise of getting divorced should not be approaching the situation the same way. So when you are creating a platform for yourself, for those of you that think about the idea, and I didn't get any opt-ins, I'm going to ask again, is anybody here trying to create, trying to use their voice for something bigger in the practice of law? And if the answer is no, you can say no. It's perfectly fine that you just want to create more money or more free time in your business. There's no judgment in the idea of not wanting to create a platform, but you're here, you're listening, so I imagine that something is interesting to you about that. But for those of you that want to create a platform, really think about this for a minute. What is it that you want to say to the world? And I want you to really, understand the idea that if you don't put it out there, hi, Otanya, it's good to see you. If you don't put it out there to the world, what you want to accomplish with your platform, you're not going to be able to use your platform to effectuate the goal that you want. Great, Brad. Brad Singer is telling us that he has a desire to have a platform for his business. So I'm happy to hear that. Yes, Elsa does as well. Tiffany does as well. Okay, so now we're getting some participation. I know that you guys are listening. Happy to hear that you guys are out there and really want to create more with your practice of law. So understand that in order to create that more, in order to have that message, you have to be able to step away from your business. It is not feasible for you to have the day-to-day responsibility for managing client matters and to have that inordinate trust that a person would place in you as their representative, and at the same time be over here, on somebody's stage, on somebody's television program, on somebody's radio program, right? The time that it takes to devote equally to both of those really is going to burn the candle at both ends. And I speak from not just my experience coaching lawyers, but I also speak from my personal experience because at one point in time, many of you know that my nickname was Dyfus Diva. DYFS stood for the Division of Youth and Family Services. And so I helped people involved in the child welfare system, people who were falsely accused, people who were parents concerned for their children whose investigations went awry, people who were going through divorce and had concerns for child welfare. And I handled those cases, and I was very aggressive in handling those cases at a time where there really weren't a lot of people in the private sector doing that work. So I've been thought of as a thought leader in that area. So in the course of doing that, I put myself out there, and I had no problem kind of yelling from the rooftops, I am DYFS diva, hear me roar, right? But when I started a business, I not only had to be responsible for going to court and being all about my courting, but I had to also be all about my business. So I was responsible for hiring people. And I was responsible for making sure that there was adequate work to feed those people. And I was responsible for making sure that all of my clients were happy. And then when I hired other people, when I hired paralegals and lawyers, and they were doing work independent of me, I had the responsibility for supervising those people. And then if something went wrong, even if something didn't go wrong, sometimes clients are just unreasonably unhappy. Sometimes they are legitimately unhappy. But if they're unhappy, they're my responsibility. So I had to make sure that I was available to hear those complaints and deal with those issues. And so there's only so much time that can still be devoted to platform. Now, as luck would have it, or as world would have it, I built a large enough platform with the child abuse and neglect message that the government overreaches and oftentimes leaves vulnerable children in the shadows because they are so busy going after mom and dad who have an innocuous argument, and little Tommy goes to school unhappy the next day. He gets much more attention than the child who's being sexually abused at home and is being disregarded because they don't know how to vocalize what their fears and concerns are. I was passionate about that. But I didn't have as much time and energy to be passionate about that when I was in the business. I really had to transcend my business in order to do that. And in order to do that, I had to create systems and I had to make my business run without me. So that's something that you have to understand. Now, the one thing that I think a lot of people fear about platforms is that once you have created a platform for yourself, you also have to keep in mind that there will be haters. Okay, so that's the second thing that I wanted to talk about today, because this was something that I think I was not really prepared for, because, my own evolution involved starting a business. It almost killed me, literally. I almost died in an accident after I fell asleep after, I think, 6 or 7 90-hour work weeks. And I said, okay, we have to do things differently now. And I started to get a handle on my business through working with coaching. And so ultimately, through being coached, immersing myself in that process, I evolved as a human. And I think the fight in me that was really driving my child abuse and neglect practice, it didn't go away. It's an instinctual part of me. I think it's always here. And I think it's always good to know that when you have some negative aspects of yourself, that nothing ever is going to be all good or all bad. You're going to have an equal part of you that is both positive and negative. And which you choose to be in, which energy you choose to be in, is going to be your choice. But it's a part of me that lived every day. Hi, LaTanya. It's great to see you. The part of me that lived every day in anger and resentment and frustration and fear and hostility that really ruled my litigation practice started to dissipate. And so as I was growing the business, I became much more concerned about teaching other people the practice so that it could live on without me. And as I did that, I started to evolve as a person. So I became less aware of the fight. And in the fighting, once you kind of let go of the fight, one of the things that started to happen was I started to really connect with the brokenness in other people. So the part of me that was really good for bitch slapping people and neck rolling and finger snapping and kind of the shit that you see on social media that just drives me crazy now, where people just, as soon as someone posts a comment, there's like this vitriol. And everyone seizes upon them. And then if you're in a group, people kind of pile on. I'm very happy that this group is not one of those places. I will not allow the Law Firm Mentor movement to become one of those places, because I'm very much committed to not doing that to people. But I see a lot of that. And what I really see that as self-injurious, self-hatred, kind of spewing outward instead of festering inward. And one of the things that I see that coming from is fear. And when you have a platform, fear is something that you're going to have to conquer as not just a way of being, but in order to be successful in having a platform, it is very much about putting yourself out there. And this is something that you have to be able to do. Because if you have a platform and no one hears it, you're not going to be very successful in achieving the result that you have. So, um, thinking about your platform, just know going into it that you will have haters. That means there are going to be people that disagree with you. And sometimes there are going to be people that vehemently disagree with you. So I know one lawyer down in Florida. She has a law firm that is women's rights divorce. And I don't remember exactly what the tag phrase is, but it is a women's rights family law firm. Just as there are law firms here in New Jersey and in other parts of the country that are men's rights family law firm. That doesn't mean that a men's rights law firm that's devoted to family law is misogynistic or hates women or does not respect women any more than the family law firm that's in Florida that is a women's rights divorce place does not honor men and respect men and value men. It just means that the perspective that they are going to serve is specific to a gender. And we're not going to get into whether or not there are ethical rules with kind of positioning yourself going after one versus another. That's kind of a different topic for a different day. But these entities have a platform. These entities have a message. And if you look at the owners of these types of entities, all of them are really driven toward something that happened. You know, the family law firm in Florida that I'm thinking of, they're very much, I know the owner personally. And she's very much about the fact that her mother went through a very nasty divorce when she was older. She was a displaced homemaker and went through that experience. And that experience then informed her daughter when her daughter became a lawyer as to this is how I want to help people, right? If I'm going to own a law firm, I want to go after the man who abandons his wife, you know, kind of for the round two wife, you know, the mistress who becomes the wife, and what that means. Now, that doesn't mean that she does not also serve male clients. Doesn't mean that she doesn't also serve people who don't have that experience, who have a healthy relationship. And frankly, she also serves people where the woman is the problem, where the woman committed adultery, where the woman tried to leave the husband after he committed his life to her and ultimately saw the ill effects of that. But the platform is there, and the platform attracts a certain type of person. So in this instance, the platform is a great marketing tool because the platform is going to be put out into the marketplace and people are going to absorb that message and say, wow, you know, I want to work with this type of lawyer. I want to work with this lawyer who has a very clear, focused attention toward an issue. And it does not bother me that she is not focused on all the other issues in the world because frankly, the more focused you are on something, the more passionate you are about it, the better you're going to become at it. So that is one scenario where a platform has a marketing overlap. And almost invariably, if you're creating a platform associated with your business, there's going to be that marketing overlap. The two are going to be almost the same, but they're not quite the same. Because again, you can have a very staunch marketing message without having a platform. So there's a lot of fear that comes with being in your platform and speaking on your platform. There are things that you have to recognize about being in your platform and speaking your message in your platform that you should be cognizant of as you are creating a platform. So the first thing that I want people to be mindful of. Hi, Lisa. Great to see you. Welcome to the live. The first thing I want you to be thinking about, not just the fact that you're going to have haters, because we talked about that a little bit, but it's the next thing, which is that oftentimes when we create a platform and we know that we're out there, we feel somewhat vulnerable and we oftentimes will feel fear and we're going to feel triggered. So you need to be prepared to address why your platform is your platform. Okay. And I've seen a lot of lawyers do this where they kind of decide they're going to be about something, right? I'm going to be about helping entrepreneurs protect their businesses from infringement. And, you know, I'm going to work in the area of patents and trademarks and copyright. And that's my passion, right? So they're all about that. They want to protect the entrepreneur. They don't want to protect large business. They don't want to protect a ma and pa shop that does not have a desire to grow, or scale, that really just wants to stay small and provide for a family. They want to help that entrepreneur who wants to skyrocket. And if that is who they're helping and what they're all about, they have to be prepared for people that are going to have an antagonistic response to that. You know, why is it that you only help entrepreneurs? Why do you hate big business? Well, do you recognize that big business creates millions of jobs every year? Aren't you in support of creating jobs? Don't you know that in the economy, that if you don't fuel the large entity, that when economies collapse, those large jobs that are still going to create enough revenue in our gross domestic product to make sure that people are able to still have a livelihood, not just a livelihood, but that goods and services are still brought into the US, that we're still an international player. You're going to undercut that if you only focus on the small business. You know, your message about small business is almost anti-big business. And what's wrong with you for saying that? Because look at all the good that's come from big business. You know, that's where the largest form of charitable contribution comes from. It comes from large entities. And yes, they get a tax break, but they also help these worthwhile causes like the American Red Cross and the United Way, right? There can be people that are very antithetical to your message. And you need to be prepared to respond to those people, because those people are not going to go away. And the beautiful thing about that is that the more negative attention there is to your message, the better you are able to recite your message and ensure that your message is kind of on the level, right? You get to practice in advance and get more people aware of your message, because nothing brought attention to abortion clinics. And we're not going to have the abortion debate, so please don't nobody go there. But nothing brought attention to abortion clinics like people outside picketing, right? Those signs got you a whole bunch of attention. Hi, Elise. It's wonderful to see you. Happy Monday, fun day. Yes, Monday is fun day because I love being back at work on Monday. So, you know, when you start to get those detractors, just know that you can use that for your ultimate good, the same way that you can use your raving fans. Now, the next thing to think about with a platform is the idea that you don't want to focus so much on the idea that there will be haters, because I think that really suppresses people much more than they realize. I have seen this a lot. I've seen it that people become almost fixated on the idea that someone is going to come after them at some point in time. Right. And I'll give you a personal example. In fact, I just posted about this in the New Jersey Family Lawyers group, and I see some New Jersey family lawyers out there. So you'll either remember this or you have the opportunity to go back and look at it. But I got a letter last week while I was in North Carolina from the Office of Attorney Ethics. And it was a letter telling me that my website was not compliant and I had to cease and desist using my website because there were things on it that were not compliant with the rules. And I remember, you know, I got this message because my office administrator sent me an email with a copy of the letter, and it was complaining about Avo. Now, for those of you that are familiar, you know, with Avo, Avo has a whole series of positive and some possibly not so positive aspects to it. But the major thing is that they have a rating system, and if you get client reviews, client testimonials, other attorney testimonials, and you put other information about you, like how many times you've published and representative cases, they will assess you as a lawyer with a rating that tells the public how highly rated you are in general based on their metrics. And there's been a pissing contest between Avo and many bar associations, but in particular New Jersey, because that's where I'm licensed, for a while now. And the gist of it is that Avo also has a marketing arrangement where you can basically pay Avo to collect leads for you. And any person who is in your practice area who's looking for a lawyer pays a fee to you, and you owe a kickback to Avo. So the client has a right to a $40 consultation fee with a lawyer. They get an hour of your time for $40, and you're required to pay Avo $10 per client generated that way. Now, many people have likened this to pay-per-click advertising, right? Every time that I put money into the marketplace that somebody clicks on my advertising, they get to me. So ultimately, I'm buying the right to interface with that person the same way that I would be through Avo. But because of the way we have characterized it, it is impermissible fee sharing, because ultimately you're taking a lawyer's fee of X dollars for a consult and giving a portion of it to Avo. Now, however you feel about that, that is the way it has been interpreted by at least New Jersey's court. Elise loves my nails. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Elise. I won't even show you the toes because the toes match, but fun stuff. So, however you feel about it, that's the way that we interpret it, or that our Supreme Court or disciplinary review board here in New Jersey has interpreted it. So they disallow the use of AVO ratings without a bunch of caveats. And I just hadn't honestly put the caveats on my website as of yet. I just honestly forgot about it. But nevertheless, there was somebody out there who decided to file a grievance with the Office of Attorney Ethics. Now, nobody would do that unless they saw me as a true competitor, because obviously, if, Susie Smith, who has $100,000 in business, is out there advertising her AVO profile, she's not getting much out of it. But the idea is that somebody who has a bigger profile, and as a law firm with 7 lawyers and a multi-million-dollar revenue stream, I'm somebody who has a bigger profile. This law firm decided to come after me. Now, I don't know who the law firm is. I will say that because they don't tell you who filed the grievance against you. But I do know that the law firm, whoever it is, identified that there was this problem with my website. And there was also what I consider to be something kind of weird that they identified. I don't know if the Office of Attorney Ethics caught this or if they caught this, but one of my clients wrote this exceptional testimonial that we use in everything. She basically said, there's Allison Williams and then there's everybody else. And she went on this emotional rant, if you will, about her situation, how bad it was, and how much I helped her. And it was really a very touching testimonial, but we had posted it, I believe, if she either put it on Yelp or she put it on LinkedIn. She put it like in a less desired place. Some of the most beautiful places, some of the most beautiful messages out there you want to have in the most visible place. So yes, Amy purports to know who it is. I don't know who it is. I have my suspicions, but nevertheless, this company decided that this law firm decided they're going to, come after us. But this client testimonial, I wanted it to be in a more popular place. So I wanted it to be available on my website, and I wanted it to be available in its original location. But I didn't want to copy and paste or have my client copy and paste it somewhere else, because you can get negative response from that on Google. So what we decided to do was just identify it on the website with the name client, as opposed to her full name. And she actually put her full name on the review on this other location. And apparently in New Jersey, if somebody writes a review for you saying client of attorney is not permissible, you have to put the actual first name and last initial of the person, right? You can put their full name, but you at least have to have their first name. Now, mind you, if that is the case, I could literally go onto my website, write the most brilliant review in the world, and just make up a first name and a last initial. And it appears as if that's a real person, as opposed to client of appears not to be. But that's a whole nother, I won't go on my rant about attorney advertising rules and how I feel that they are not keeping in line with today's day and time. The reality is the rule was brought to my attention. I didn't follow the rule to the letter of the law, so I have to fix it, right? But I say that because this is an example of where a hater has come up. And I want to be very clear that haters coming up is not something that deters me in any way. There is something to be said for the idea of healthy competition, and then there's predatory competition, right? And I know a lot of lawyers are going to be fearful of predatory competition, like, oh my God, this person or these people are out there and they're going to come after me. But understand something, that I truly believe that there are going to be the shit factors in life that you cannot avoid, but there are also going to be ways that you can bring about real problems in this area that are problematic. Okay, so one of the things that we know from understanding universal law, understanding how the mind works, is that we can very much bring about things that we don't want to happen, right? If we start focusing our attention on all of the bad shit in life, the bad shit in life is going to find its way to you at some point. Now, that doesn't mean that being all happy and cheery all the time means that nothing ever goes wrong, right? There is some degree of ebb and flow in life. There are ups and downs. The law of rhythm does tell us that you're going to have a high and a low season. You're going to have a good and a bad. You're going to have a high and a low. That is the nature of life. But when you are focusing on that low, you drive it lower. And when you're focusing on that high, you drive it higher. So, one of the things that people oftentimes will fail to realize is the inordinate power that they have to be able to accomplish and bring about things into their life. And excessive worry tends to bring about the very negative consequences um, that we hate, that we're afraid of. So, I'm going to use an example. I'm going to use an example from my own past. It's an ex post facto example because this was something that I didn't know until I was taught it through working with my own wealth coach and understanding the mindset of it. But one of the things that he taught me was about this idea that there is a law of polarity. There's a high for every low, a good for every bad, and that there are opposites and equal and opposite in everything in life. So I started thinking about that and thinking, is that really true? I mean, this sounds kind of like woo-woo bullshit nonsense. Can we just stay like in the intellectual plane? I'm a lawyer. I want to be an analytic, right? And there's not a whole lot of analytical evidence for this. So I started looking for evidence. And the one piece of evidence I found was something that happened to me when I was in my seventh year of practice. Sixth year of practice, sorry. So, as many of you know, I'm a certified matrimonial law attorney. And I was the youngest attorney in the state of New Jersey ever to become certified in any discipline. And I verified that fact when I became certified back in 2010. I was certified at the same time as my best friend, Amy Coors, who is on the live. Amy also was certified after 5 years of practice. You find out in your sixth year, but we were certified after we passed the test and got our credential, if you will, after 5 years in practicing, because that's when you are eligible to take the test and have attorneys and judges review you so that you can ultimately have that award, that accomplishment. But Amy is a couple years older than me, so technically I was the youngest. She and I have gone through a lot of things together, and she's actually now bypassed me in terms of accomplishing things because she's actually now in the International Academy of Family Lawyers, which I am not. But she and I have run neck and neck on our accomplishments throughout the years. But I was technically the chronologically youngest, and so. When I learned that, I learned it because I was actually on trial. Speaking of Amy, Amy called my office when she got her letter because she assumed that I would get a letter. She's always had more faith in me than I've ever had in myself. So she assumed if she got a letter, I must have gotten a letter. She called my assistant at the time. Her name was Thomasina, and asked Tommy, did I get a letter? Tommy checked the mail. Yep, my letter is there. And then she insisted that Tommy fax it over to the chambers of the judge where I was trying a case. And I was trying a case about shaken baby syndrome with 2 Pakistani interpreters. I'll never forget that case. And as I'm on my feet, at some point, the judge decided that he was going to interrupt the trial early. We took a extra 40 minutes of lunch so that he could announce to the courtroom and then ask my co-counsel, who was at that time my very good friend, Rebecca, if she would take me out to celebrate that I had become a certified matrimonial law attorney. So great day, great judge, great case, and great day all around, right? So that was March of 2010. So I was riding a high. Like at that point in my time, I was trying this case. It was a very sophisticated case relative to my level of knowledge and experience at that time. I was getting a very big reputation off of that case because lawyers would start to come up to me in the courthouse and introduce themselves to me and say, oh, I heard you're the one who's trying that case. And so, I kind of, I was feeling myself, right? I was like, I had all this positive self-esteem and my ego was getting big, and not big like I was becoming an asshole, but big like, wow, I feel that I'm mediocre and all these other people are disagreeing with me. This is a great thing. And then 2 months later, something happened. Something happened that was very disturbing, which was that I handled cases in child abuse and neglect court all the time. And I oftentimes represented foster parents who don't have an absolute right to come into those cases. Those cases are sealed, but you can file an application and ask to come into the case to address issues with the court. So we had done that in this other case. And I found out some information about ongoing testimony in the case and decided that I wanted to get the proceeding tape from that particular hearing. So I wrote to the law librarian, as is the process. I followed the AOC procedure, wrote and requested a copy of the tape. Now, what was supposed to happen was the law librarian was supposed to go to the judge. The judge was either supposed to say yay or nay. And if the judge said nay, then I would have the right to appeal the denial of that access to discovery to that judge, right? And at that point, it would then be on notice to everybody and everybody could make arguments. Well, that didn't happen. What happened was I got a copy of the tape in the mail. Okay, so I figured that the court had authorized my request and had granted me access to it. So I use it in my reply papers, referenced what happened on the transcript, and ultimately, at some point, I get a call from the court. The judge decided to have a hearing or have a conference with just the attorneys. I was instructed to come to court on a date certain at a time certain. And I'm asking questions like, oh, okay, am I bringing my clients? Are we having a settlement conference? What is this? And the law clerk basically said, well, the judge just wants to have a conference, just the attorneys, no clients. And this was like a week before the hearing was scheduled. So I was like, okay, well, maybe he's just going to grant my application as of right, because, you know, I was at that point believing that I was on the side of justice. And he's going to grant my application, and then I will have the right to, be in the case and have my trial and whatever. Well, that didn't happen. We went to court. We're sitting outside. None of the attorneys know why we're in court, other than that we're having a conference. But at some point, I remembered I was insisting with the law clerk. I was like, I really want to be prepared for whatever is going to happen in court. Can you tell me what I need to prepare for? And she kept saying, there's nothing to prepare for. You're just going to have a conference. And at some point I got a bad vibe. So I said, are you allowed to tell me what the real reason is that I'm being brought to court? And there was silence on the phone for a long time. And the girl finally said, no, I'm not. So I said, okay, don't know what that's about, but okay. And I really wanted to believe that something wasn't wrong, but I get there, and ultimately when we're called in, the judge calls the case, holds up my letter, says, hey, we got this letter that you requested. And the way you worded it tricked the law librarian into believing that she could give you this document. You're not authorized to have it, and you basically misrepresented facts to the court. So I'm going to file a grievance against you, and I'm kicking you out of the case. I'm firing you from the case, and you're supposed to tell your clients that, and have a good day. And I'm just stunned. And I try to address the court, and I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like I wrote, and they were supposed to they were supposed to ask you. I thought that of course they asked you. That's why I got the tape. The only way I would be able to get the tape is if they asked you. So how did you think I was misleading the law librarian? I mean, this letter was supposed to go to you. And so there was like this whole big thing, but ultimately this judge kicked me out of this case. I had to go then tell my clients, by the way, I've been fired from your case after I've spent all your money, because they had literally $50 on account. I obviously didn't charge them for what was left that day. And this judge, the Superior Court judge, told me at 6 years in practice that he was filing a grievance against me. And the gravamen of that hit me, but I was kind of just stunned into silence. And then when I got back to my office, I kind of had my little meltdown. I mean, so much so that my boss at the time, who was a phenomenal guy, he called the court. He was scheduled to be in trial that afternoon. He called the court and said, my associate needs me. I'm not coming to court. I will explain later. And the court respected him. He was a wonderful man in his, at that time, early 70s. Basically said, all right, well, if he's announcing he's not coming to court, something's wrong. But that was the worst time in my life. The court filed a grievance against me. I had to hire an attorney. Hi, Stacy. Yeah, that was my expression as well. I very much felt the same way. Now, this happened, mind you, 2 months after the high. So that's kind of the point, which is, the ultimate outcome of this grievance was nowhere near as bad as it could have been. Ultimately, it was thrown out because it was meritless, but it was a judge, so it didn't get immediately thrown out. They have this whole program that you have to go through, and I had to be investigated, and I had to file a response. I hired an attorney, and I had the stress of that for a long time. And unfortunately, the attorney that I worked for was also on the ethics committee. So even though my grievance was not assigned to his panel, it was assigned to another panel. When they realized, wait a minute, the attorney at its law firm is on the ethics committee, it had to then be referred out. So I was basically at the finish line when I had to start the whole process over again of review in another county. And, to say that I had nights of not sleeping, waking up, throwing up, um, mental breakdowns on the side of the road. I mean, it was just an awful time. It really was. Now, ultimately, it was thrown out, and I did not get the apology that I feel I deserved because, again, I was kind of brought into a court hearing. I was, not given notice of what the hearing was for. I couldn't prepare for it. I was given somewhat of an opportunity to be heard, but the judge basically cut me off every time I spoke. So I don't know that that was really a true opportunity. And then there was a consequence to that. So I really wanted to file a grievance in response and say, okay, my conduct of writing a letter a certain way is nothing compared to you, a Superior Court judge, kind of raking me over the coals. But that's what happened. So that was the example of the high and the low. Yes, exactly, Stacey. Speaking of ebbs and flows, that's exactly what it was. It was the law of polarity in work. And of course, I didn't know it at the time, but retrospectively, that's what happened. I had the highest of highs, right? I was trying this case. I was at the top of my A game for that point. I was trying a very sophisticated case from a science perspective with, mechanical engineering data and medical data and learning all about subdural hematomas and head circumference and biparietal diameter and all that sexy stuff, right? And I was just kind of in my intellectual nerdy genius guru happy stage. And then I got certified by the Supreme Court of New Jersey, and I was the youngest. And, it was not also lost on me that I was the first African American. So that was also kind of a feather in my cap. And I was not at a large law firm. At that point, in the midst of that case, I transitioned from working at a large firm to working at a small firm. So I kind of felt like I had all of these accoutrements and all of these positive things, and like the sky is the limit and the world is my oyster. And then I literally felt like someone just came along and kicked me in the stomach out of a cliff, off of a cliff. I felt like, the world was coming to an end, because at that point I had literally nothing in my life except the practice of law. So if somebody was going to take that away from me, they might as well have just killed me. That's honestly how I felt about it. So that was an example of the high and the low. Now, what I didn't think about was how we got to that low. And if I really think about it in retrospect, it came from this very intense, pensive fear that was in me all the time. The fear that was in me all the time was that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't capable enough, that I was living in imposter syndrome, right? I was tricking people, that, at some point they were going to find out that I was rattling off all these statutes and cases and names because I didn't feel like I knew enough. I didn't feel like I belonged there, right? I didn't have all the things I was supposed to have. I didn't have a penis. I didn't have a lack of pigment. I didn't have a northern pedigree. I grew up in the South. I had a weight problem, so I wasn't traditionally female. I didn't have a soft, girly type of voice. So I had this big, booming kind of voice, and I just didn't feel like I belonged in this little system that was created for old white men, because I wasn't an old white man, and I had to kind of come to terms with that, but I didn't come to terms with it. And so as a result, my fear stayed embedded in every core of my body, and it was always with me. So even as I was kind of rising up in self-esteem in the area of the law, I did not have a legitimate belief that those things were real. And Natalie says, the fear of not being good enough is so pervasive with male attorneys, while the men walk in sometimes unprepared and take over the courtroom. That's very true. Or female attorneys, Natalie. It's very true. Ironically, I would say this, because I do have male clients. I would note that male attorneys also have the fear of not being enough, but I think what tends to happen with them is that they mask it differently. So I think women are much more vocal about not feeling enough, not being enough, and they show that in insecurity. I think men practice faux security a lot better and a lot more often than women do. So, as somebody who kind of struggled with that, I did not deal with that issue, and it dealt with me. So again, another warning, another caveat to this idea of creating a platform for yourself. If you are going to create a platform for yourself, you have to deal with your shit. right? Now, that doesn't mean that everybody who's out there in the world kind of speaking big and bringing big things into the world has dealt with their shit, okay? So they will oftentimes have things deal with them. The same way that if you think about celebrities, there are a lot of celebrities that ultimately self-destruct because they haven't dealt with their shit. And they have money and fame and beauty and status and all the things that make us say, wow, look at that. And I want to have that when I grow up. And we put these people on such pedestals that they are oftentimes the most broken of us because they don't, not only do they not deal with their shit, but they kind of have people and placaters and pacifiers that help them not deal with their shit. So there is something to be said for bringing into your life what it is that you focus on, that we will ultimately create for ourselves that which we focus on the most. And I saw this not only in my life, I saw this in the life of one of my attorneys who's no longer with us. But this attorney was sued while she worked here. And it was in a very, very contentious case. Case was hostile, nasty. Our client was a nice guy, but our client made very poor choices in women, and he made a lot of those very poor choices with a lot of different poor choice women, right? And a 10 doesn't marry a 2, so our client wasn't perfect. But our client had a child with one woman, and they were in perpetual litigation from basically birth to age 7, which is the age of the child at the time we tried his case. We won his custody case, and then after that, the mother appealed. And during her appeal, she ultimately decided that she was going to make new allegations. Yes, Tiffany, the lesson is definitely deal with your ish before it deals with you. I agree with that. I endorse that message that I just said, and thank you for restating it. You said it much nicer than I did because I use potty mouth sometimes. I hope you guys are okay with that. And if you're not, this is the wrong group. Just putting that out there. But in all seriousness, back to my client. So my client, we were representing him, and the adversary on this case was a really, really, really bad guy. This guy had been in ethics trouble. This guy was hostile, nasty, bombastic, arrogant, just everything that no one would want to deal with. And this particular lawyer in my office who was trying the case was very fragile. And by fragile, I meant that she took everything personally. Everything was about attacking her. No matter what the adversary did that was truly about representing his client, she took it as a personal affront. And at some point in time, she would just come into the office and just, verbally vomit about how this adversary is out to get her, and he's always focused on her, and he's always putting her down, and he's always making her look stupid, and he's always saying something negative about her. And what I told her was, listen, at some point you have to stop focusing on the adversary. It's not about the adversary. It's not even about the adverse party. It's about our client. So how can you make the most strong, effective argument that you can for our client, notwithstanding the noise and the chatter that's coming from the adversary? Like, just let it be kind of noise out here, and you stay focused on whatever it is you're focused on. Like, don't let this get into your head. And she couldn't do that. She was just transfixed on the idea that he was out to get her, and he was coming after her, and he was making her look bad and making her feel bad. And then out of the blue one day, she said something in court that our client relayed about another person. So our client wanted to call a certain witness to give a proffer as to what that witness would testify to. This lawyer stood up and basically said, hey, I want to call this client or this witness because my client says this person said blah, 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 right? Now, there's a 100% litigation privilege for things that you say in the course of representing your client. So you as a lawyer can't be sued for that. Notwithstanding black letter law on that, adversary sued her, claiming that his client had been defamed by those statements. So when that lawsuit comes in, it was not, of course, just directed at my attorney. It was directed at me. There was a claim that I failed to supervise this lawyer who had been practicing for a decade and a half because I allowed her to say something in court that she said while I wasn't there. There was also the claim that, of course, kind of a respondent superior, I had the claim, I had the responsibility of supervising her and overseeing her work, and I didn't put systems in place to make sure she knew not to say certain things and blah, blah, blah. It was complete bullshit. I knew it was bullshit. We sent a frivolous litigation letter through a friend of mine. And then ultimately, when it wasn't withdrawn, I had to notify my malpractice carrier and I had to, have it defended. Now, luckily, I didn't have any out-of-pocket expense of that. But I had to go through the stress of, holy shit, they're coming after me and they're trying to get a judgment against me. And even though I know it's nonsense, lots of nonsense results in judgments in the judicial system. So we had to defend that. Now, ultimately, it was thrown out. But I thought about it and I talked to this lawyer about it because I didn't hold any animosity toward my lawyer because my lawyer was doing her job. And despite how difficult that particular claim was, she's a good lawyer. But that situation resulted, I believe firmly, because she was so focused, all of her energy was directed at how is this person going to hurt me, that her greatest fear then manifested in this lawyer coming after her. And despite the fact that I have had hostile, nasty, vitriolic litigation, I have had people say things demeaning and defaming and unflattering about me in court and outside of court. I've been referred to by names. I've been given, the nasty rhetoric of, oh, this lawyer, blank, 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 blank. That's never my focus. And even though I had low self-esteem when I was practicing and litigating on a regular basis, I remember I had a lot of strong intuitive self-esteem about my ability to litigate. I always knew I was a good lawyer, pretty much from 4 or 5 years out. So I would focus my attention there, and all of the stuff just kind of went away. And as a result, despite the fact that I would have nasty, hostile, arrogant, adversarial adversaries, the same way that my lawyer did, it didn't impact me the same way because my focus wasn't in the same place that hers was. And so I think back on that with other employees that I've had, not just this attorney, but other employees that were secretaries, receptionists, paralegals, that either resigned or ultimately I asked them to leave for one reason or another. Almost invariably, the lead up to that time, the anxiety that they would direct their attention toward, I'm not going to be here, I'm not going to be here, I'm not going to be here. That's exactly what happened. And you may think it's because the anxiety led them to underperform, and then that then caused the ripple effect of whatever led them to be terminated. But really, if you think about it, it really is that the energy that they are putting into that is causing waves in other areas. Now, it could be that they're underperforming as a result, or it could just be that they're communicating to me energetically that they don't want to be here, that they can't be here, that they can't handle the job. But where you focus your anxiety very much does grow. So when you start to focus your attention on something negative, understand that you are causing it to grow. And so when you have a platform, it is particularly necessary that you deal with your stuff, that you deal with your ish, that you deal with your shit. Because if you don't deal with it, it will deal with you, and it will deal with you in a way that's going to tear apart your platform. Meaning all of the wonderful things that you've spoken to the world, they don't go away simply because somebody comes after you, but they erode the joy that you have in speaking that message and in bringing it to the world. So there's a few things that you can do. Just going to sum this up. We're a little over time, and I'm glad for those of you that stuck around. There are some things that you can do as you are creating a platform to make sure that you don't focus on the haters and that you focus on the platform instead. So number one is, of course, just the obvious. Focus your attention on what matters. Focus your attention on the platform, not the haters, right? The haters are going to be there. You will deal with them when they come. And we've already talked about the idea that you do not have to have a backup plan. You do have to have a plan, right? The absence of a plan is not the same as the absence of a backup plan. You need to have a plan to deal with your haters, but you don't need to be focused on your haters. You need to be focused on your platform. Second, work on your mindset, okay? Shit happens. It's the nature of life, okay? Joy happens, beauty happens, glory happens, wonderful things happen, awful things happen as well. Okay. But how far down you're going to go down the rabbit hole when something awful happens is going to be based in your consciousness and your focus on the problem versus the solution. So when negative things happen, you put your attention on the positive things, or at least put your attention on the solution rather than the problem, and you will make those negative things become much more palatable. Third, you're going to develop a plan. Okay. Now there is some degree of planning ahead, right? There are things that you can do to make sure that you are on the straight and narrow, and that becomes making sure that you follow rules. Okay. So, for instance, with my website, we regularly audit our website. We regularly make sure that we're doing what is right and ethical and appropriate with our website, but there are going to be those haters out there. I have developed a plan for dealing with the haters. For those of you that are in New Jersey and saw my post about the OAE letter, do know that I am finding out how that letter came about, and I'm going to deal with that person or those people in the way I will deal with them. Because I think most people know by now that I'm not a smart person to make into an enemy. But that plan came about because a hater came about. That plan wasn't something that I was focused on. It wasn't something that I ever thought about beforehand. That plan was just something that, you know, needed to happen now that shit has happened, right? And then finally, and this is probably the most important point, which is make sure that you are prepared to be lonely as you become more of a star in your space, right? There are very few people as you ascend to the top that really understand what that is. There are people that understand what it is to be successful. They understand what it is to have money, to have status, to own a law firm. But knowing what it is to have a platform, to have people listen to you simply because you are speaking, to have people know you when you don't know them, to have people know of you, to have people hear of you and respect you and desire you, to have people that just want to be near you, that just want to talk to you, that just want a few minutes of your time so they can feel inspired. That can be overwhelming. And sometimes you may not want to deal with it, right? Sometimes that can cause the introvert to become even more insular. It can cause the extrovert to spend more time and energy on other people than on their platform. So it's very important that when you create a platform, that you are focused on the platform, and that in thinking about your platform, that you recognize that you're going to have to be very intentional about filling your life and your space and your time and your energy with people and connections that are supportive of your platform. That doesn't mean that you don't listen to people who disagree with it. You absolutely should. But your time and energy really should be focused on making sure that your life is full. And that life can be full, whether it's full with your platform, full with your family, full with your friends. But you're going to be up there, out there on your own. And the sooner you adjust to that idea, the less scary it becomes and the more you can stay firm in that. So Latanya Moore notes, this is so true. It's overwhelming and increases anxiety. Yes, Latanya, it very much does. So I want to thank you guys for checking this out today. We had a nice talk about our platforms and our haters. For the haters that are out there, know that your day is coming. For the people that are out there creating platforms, I am hopeful that you are going to stand firm in doing that. I'm Allison Williams, your law firm mentor. Have a great day.